When I opened my eyes, the room was still filled with the faint, soothing scent of incense. My mother was sitting in front of the four-poster bed, her brow furrowed as she handed the red, gold-embossed marriage contract to Auntie Wang, who was standing beside her. "Go return this marriage proposal to the Marquis of Jingan's mansion and tell them that our true family is not worthy of such a match." Mother sighed, her eyes filled with worry. "Then go and inform the Wei family that we've accepted Wei Qingzhou's birth chart." "Wait a minute!" I sat up abruptly, grabbed Matron Wang's hand, and forcefully snatched back the marriage notice from the Jing'an Marquis' manor. The tangible feel of the stiff paper against my fingertips snapped my mind, which had been somewhat foggy, back to full clarity. I really have been reborn. I've returned to the day when my mother was about to arrange my marriage. "Heir, what are you doing?" My mother was startled by my behavior and quickly reached out to feel my forehead. "Did you have a nightmare?" I clutched the marriage proposal tightly, my palms slightly sweaty, yet my gaze was clearer than ever. "Mother, I will not marry Wei Qingzhou. I intend to marry into the house of the Marquis of Jing'an." As soon as those words were spoken, all the maids and servants in the room gasped in shock. My mother's face turned pale, and she rebuked me urgently. "What nonsense are you spouting? Gu Tingyun, the heir to the Marquis of Jing'an, has suffered from a lung condition since childhood. He's a sickly wretch who's been stuck in a medicine pot his whole life. Even the head of the Imperial Medical Academy has declared that he won't live past 30. If you marry him, do you really want to spend the rest of your life as a widow in name only?" "A widow?" I snorted derisively to myself. In my previous life, I heeded everyone's warnings and joyfully married Wei Qingzhou, a man whom the world saw as having a bright future. Wei Qingzhou was indeed a man of good character. He took no concubines and never resorted to domestic violence. In the eyes of others, I was a first-rank noble lady living a life of glory, the wife of a fine husband whom everyone in the capital envied. But beneath this glamorous facade lies a life that has been utterly drained of me. The Wei family is a centuries-old clan with a web of intricate relationships. My mother-in-law was bedridden year-round and required constant care. I had to scramble to secure a dowry for my younger sister-in-law's marriage. The upbringing of the illegitimate sons and daughters, the intricate web of social obligations, and the open and covert rivalries between the various branches of the family. Every single family matter, big or small, weighed on my shoulders like a massive boulder. I've spent my whole life spinning like a top, pouring my heart and soul into maintaining the Wei family's reputation. Now that I've reached the age of 80, everyone praises me for having a large family and enjoying both a long life and good health. But it wasn't until my final moments that I suddenly realized I couldn't even remember what pastries I liked to eat or what books I loved to read when I was a young girl. My entire life has been devoid of any sense of self. I've spent it all working for others' benefit. What struck me as even more absurd was that, on my deathbed, I happened to overhear a conversation among the noblewomen who had come to visit me. They were saying that Gu Tingyun, that sickly young man whom the entire capital had once declared would not live past 30, not only did not die young, but actually lived to be 90, outliving even my seemingly healthy husband, Wei Qingzhou. In this life, I'd rather be a living widow in the eyes of others at the Marquis of Jing'an's mansion than repeat the same mistake and spend my entire life as a free housekeeper for that vast family. "Mother," I took a deep breath, looked straight into her anxious eyes, and spoke with unwavering conviction. "Though the Wei family boasts a prestigious lineage, they have numerous offspring, and the interests of the various branches are entangled and unclear. If I were to marry into that family, I would be jumping into a pit of fire that would consume me for the rest of my life. The Marquis of Jing'an's household, however, is different. The Marquis and his wife have only one legitimate son, Gu Tingyun. It is a simple household. Even if the crown prince is truly frail, I would be better off marrying into that family and living a quiet life behind closed doors than being worn down to the bone in the Wei family's vast, secluded mansion. My mind is made up regarding this marriage." Seeing the determination in my eyes, my mother knew I'd always been a strong-willed person since childhood. Even though she was deeply reluctant, she could do nothing but let out a long sigh and tacitly accept the marriage. Once the wedding date was set, rumors began to swirl throughout the capital, with people mocking me, chewing, for being out of my mind. I paid no heed to them, however. Instead, I secretly sent a message to the Marquis of Jingen's residence. 3 days later, in a private room at a secluded tea house in the southern part of the city. I pushed open the door and walked in. Behind the screen sat a slender, tall figure. Gu Tingyun, dressed in a moon-white brocade robe, was bent over, stoking the charcoal in his hand warmer. Hearing a sound, he looked up. His face was exquisitely refined and ethereal, though his complexion was pale to the point of transparency, and his lips lacked any hint of color. Yet his eyes were as deep and still as a cold pond, devoid of even a trace of the cloudiness or despair one might expect from a sick person. He covered his mouth and coughed softly twice. His knuckles were an unhealthy pallor, and his voice, though slightly hoarse, remained calm. "Miss Chu, please have a seat. I'm not feeling well and was unable to rise to greet you. I hope you'll forgive me." "You're too kind, Crown Prince." I sat down gracefully across from him and, without beating around the bush, got straight to the point. "I asked you here today because there are some things I'd like to discuss with you before the wedding." Gu Tingyun lifted the glass of plain water in front of him and took a sip, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Miss Chu, are you asking how many more years this body can last? Or do you have some conditions to propose?" "Neither," I said, meeting his probing gaze with a steely stare. I know the Crown Prince is frail, so I wanted to make my boundaries clear to him in advance. I married into the Marquis' household to be the Crown Prince's wife, not his housekeeper. I will not spend endless days and nights tending to a sick man at his bedside, nor am I willing to shoulder all the household chores throughout the Marquis' estate on my own. If the Crown Prince desires a virtuous and self-sacrificing saint who would burn herself out to illuminate the Marquis' household, then Chuyin is likely not the right person for the job. A brief silence fell over the private room. Gu Tingyun looked at me. A hint of surprise flashed in his eyes, and then he actually let out a low chuckle. The laughter tugged at his lungs, triggering another fit of light coughing, but the amusement in his eyes only grew stronger. "Miss Chu, you are certainly candid." He wiped the corner of his mouth with a snow-white handkerchief, and his tone grew unusually serious. "In that case, I'll be frank with you as well. With this frail body of mine, I may not be able to give you children, nor will I be able to accompany you on frequent outings to enjoy the spring scenery like other husbands do. If you marry me, you'll likely face criticism from our clan and the pressure of not bearing an heir. Miss Chu, have you truly thought this through? So what if there's no heir? Criticism from the clan doesn't put food on the table." I let out a cold laugh, my fingertips tapping lightly on the table as I cut straight to the heart of the matter, exposing the turbulent undercurrents currently swirling within the Marquis of Jingen's household. I suspect the clan's criticism is just a pretext. The real motive is that someone wants to wipe out the family line, isn't it? Gu Tingyun's gaze grew slightly intense. I looked at him, speaking clearly, word by word. Everyone in the capital knows that the Crown Prince's so-called dear second uncle has his eyes firmly set on the Crown Prince's body. I fear he has long been plotting in secret. If the Crown Prince remains childless, he intends to have his own son, Gu Mingqian, adopted by you, so he can legitimately seize the title and estate of the Marquis of Jingen. Gu Tingyun listened quietly, his slender fingers idly tracing the rim of his teacup. A moment later, the gentle, frail aura that had surrounded him suddenly shifted, giving way to a faint yet sharp air of authority. "Miss Chu, you really are brilliant. Since you see right through the second wife's schemes, how do you plan to handle this? Now that I've married into the Marquis' household, the only masters of this estate are the Crown Prince and I. If anyone else thinks they can usurp our place and climb to power by stepping over our own flesh and blood, they're dreaming." I stood tall, my voice firm and resolute. "I don't care what people outside say. As long as the Crown Prince doesn't use that greater good of the family nonsense to force me to back down, I have the means to protect the peace of our eldest branch. I'd rather not have to worry about it, but I'm certainly not afraid of a fight." Their gazes met in the air, not with tender affection, but with the mutual understanding and insight of two worthy opponents. Gu Tingyun suddenly set down the handkerchief he was holding, and a genuine smile flashed across his eyes. "All right," he said in a clear, firm voice that left no room for doubt. Chuyin, as long as I, Gu Tingyun, am alive, the Jing and Marquis manor is yours to rule as you see fit. If anyone dares to wrong you, I will not let them off lightly. That meeting at the tea house that day put my mind completely at ease. This frail crown prince, who looked as though a mere gust of wind could blow him over, was by no means a pushover. This marriage is the safe haven I chose after careful consideration, and I will not allow anyone to interfere with or destroy it. The dragon and phoenix wedding candles burned all night on their wedding night. Gu Tingyun was not in the best of health. After drinking the ceremonial cup of wine, he began to cough uncontrollably. He did not force himself to perform the marital rites, but simply ordered that an extra brocade quilt be prepared so that we could lie down fully clothed together. That night, I slept soundly, free from the strict rules imposed by elders and the pressure to produce an heir, with only the soft, restrained breathing of the person beside me. Early the next morning, I went to the main hall to present tea. My mother-in-law, Mrs. Liu, was a gentle-faced woman who had been a devout Buddhist for many years. She looked at me, her eyes filled with tenderness and hope. After drinking the tea offered by her daughter-in-law, she had the elderly maid standing beside her carry in two heavy, large redwood chests. Heir, this chest contains the ledgers for all the Marquis estates and the inventory records for the storehouses, Mrs. Liu said gently. Now that you've joined our family, you are the matriarch of the Marquis' household. I wore myself out with hard work in my younger years, but now I can finally entrust the management of the household to you. Hearing these all too familiar words, I felt not a shred of joy at the prospect of holding power, only deep caution. If I were to accept this, it would mean that the daily needs, including food, drink, and personal affairs, as well as social obligations for the hundreds of people in the home mansion would all fall on my shoulders alone. I absolutely refused to repeat the same mistake and take on these tedious, thankless tasks. I stood up and, respectfully yet firmly, pushed the key back toward her. Mother, your kindness is overwhelming, and your daughter-in-law is both honored and humbled. However, as I have only just arrived and am still young, I fear I may not be able to win the respect of everyone. Furthermore, the crown prince requires meticulous care. I wish to first get the household affairs of our main family's courtyard in order so I can devote more attention to the crown prince. As for managing the household affairs of this Marquis' mansion, it is best that you, mother, continue to be at the helm. Liu was slightly taken aback. She clearly hadn't expected a new daughter-in-law to voluntarily decline the position of house manager. Gu Tingyun, who had been sitting to the side sipping tea, let a hint of a smile flit across his eyes and spoke up at just the right moment to save me from an awkward situation. Mother, Heir has a point. The Marquis's household has many complex affairs. We mustn't wear her out right from the start. Let's just go along with her wishes. When her son spoke up, Mrs. Liu, though disappointed, went along with it and took back the token. Just then, a burst of unfriendly laughter suddenly rang out from outside the hall. That's not right, Mrs. Tingyun. Since you're the crown prince's consort, how can you be so concerned only with your own courtyard and not care about the well-being of the entire Marquis' estate? No sooner had he finished speaking than his second uncle from a collateral branch, Mr. Gu, strode into the main hall accompanied by his eldest grandson, Gu Mingqian, who was about 15 or 16 years old. Without even waiting for an announcement, the two entered as if they were coming home. I narrowed my eyes slightly and stared coldly at this uninvited guest. Second Master Gu first paid a perfunctory bow to Lady Liu, then pushed Gu Mingqian forward, putting on the air of a well-meaning eldest sister-in-law. The Imperial Medical Academy has explicitly stated that, given Tingyun's constitution, she must rest and avoid even the slightest mental strain. The new bride is so immature. She refuses to shoulder the responsibilities of the Marquis' mansion. In my opinion, it would be best for Mingqian to move into Qingsong Pavilion in the main courtyard today. Mingqian is a sensible young man. He can run errands for Tingyun and check the accounts on a daily basis, which would certainly lighten the main household's burden. He paused, his gaze sweeping meaningfully over Gu Tingyun's pale face, and said thoughtfully, besides, given Tingyun's current condition, the Marquis' household must make preparations early on. If Mingqian gets a head start on familiarizing himself with the family estate, then should the worst really happen in the future, the Marquis' household won't be thrown into disarray. Don't you agree? As soon as those words were spoken, Lady Lu's face instantly turned ashen with rage. This wasn't about sharing the burden at all, it was clearly a blatant curse for the crown prince to die soon, and an impatient attempt to install Gu Mingqian in the main courtyard as the heir apparent. Gu Tingyan began coughing violently, his slender fingers clenching the armrests of the armchair so tightly that his knuckles turned white. I hurried over, gently patting him on the back to help him catch his breath, then turned around and glared coldly at the smug second master Gu. "Uncle, you're so full of yourself, and such grand schemes." I cut him off without mercy. "The crown prince is still sitting here safe and sound, yet you keep going on and on about what-ifs and making plans in advance. What is it, are you a court physician at the Imperial Medical Academy, or the king of hell who rules over life and death? Do you really think you get to decide the crown prince's lifespan?" Second Master Gu's expression hardened, and he snapped, "How dare you, a newlywed who's only just entered this household, interrupt an elder? I'm doing this for the sake of the Marquis family's legacy." "For the sake of the Ho family estate? Uncle, please don't make blotting out the family line sound so noble." I decided not to spare his feelings any longer and pulled several documents directly from my sleeve, the ones Gu Tingyan had personally handed to me last night, which contained irrefutable evidence that the second wife's household had been bleeding the main household dry all these years under the guise of helping out. I slammed the list down on the table with a loud thud, the sound was crisp and loud, startling everyone in the room. "Since second uncle brought up settling accounts, let's start by settling the old ones." I pointed at the receipts, my words cutting like knives. 2 years ago, second uncle withdrew 5,000 taels from the public funds under the pretext of repairing our ancestral graves, but in reality, he used it to cover the losses at the gambling den south of the city. Last year, he claimed he was hiring a renowned scholar from Jiangnan for Mingqian and withdrew 3,000 taels. Where is that scholar now? Instead, there's a new top courtesan at the 100 Flowers Pavilion, one that Uncle No. 2 has taken under his wing. Now, you can't even be bothered to cover it up anymore. You're actually trying to dip your hands straight into the main courtyard's treasury. Do you really think the Marquis of Jingan's mansion is the personal piggy bank of your second branch of the family? With his past exposed in front of everyone, second Master Gu's face turned bright red, and his finger trembled as he pointed at me. You're making slanderous accusations. Elder sister-in-law, are you just going to let this shrew humiliate her elders like this? Although Lady Lu was usually gentle by nature, when it came to her one and only treasure, she suddenly became completely unyielding. She coldly looked away. "Every word Heir said is true. The records are all here, why are you humiliating me?" Seeing this, Gu Mingqian, who had remained silent until then, clenched his teeth and tried to salvage the situation. "Please calm down, Crown Prince's consort. My grandfather meant well. Mingqian only wishes to remain in the main residence to serve my cousin. I have absolutely no improper intentions. Stop putting on that hypocritical act." I shot him a cold glare and cut him off mid-sentence. If the title is not proper, the words lack legitimacy. The Crown Prince is the heir to the title personally bestowed by the Emperor. As long as the Crown Prince is alive, the main household has no business being lectured by collateral branches. If you truly have filial piety, you should stay within the confines of your second wife's courtyard, shut yourself away to study diligently, and earn an official post to bring honor to your family, not spend your days buying these 3 mu and 3 fin of land in the main courtyard, daydreaming about getting something for nothing. You're completely unreasonable." Second Master Gu was furious and, flinging his sleeve aside, was about to cause a scene. "Someone, come here." Just then, Gu Tingyan's cough finally subsided. He slowly lifted his eyelids. His deep, mysterious eyes showed not a trace of illness or weakness, only a fierce, ruthless aura. Second uncle is advanced in years and should not be out and about. Invite second uncle and young Master Mingqian back to the second branch's courtyard. Without my written order, the second branch is forbidden from setting foot in the main courtyard from now on. The armed guards from the home mansion immediately filed in one after another, forming a wall as solid as an iron tower in front of second master Gu. Gu Tingyun! How dare you speak to your elders like that? Aren't you afraid the clan will shame you? Second master Gu, held back by the security guards, began to curse furiously. Gu Tingyun chuckled softly, wiped her hands with a snow-white handkerchief, and spoke in an extremely cold tone. If second uncle is dissatisfied, he is welcome to go to Shuntian Prefecture and accuse me of filial disobedience. While he's at it, let Shuntian Prefecture investigate whether the silver second uncle has embezzled from the Marquis' public treasury over the years is enough to warrant a sentence of exile. As for the rules of the eldest branch of the family, from now on, the Crown Prince's consort will have the final say. As soon as those words were spoken, second master Gu's tirade came to an abrupt halt. He looked like a rooster with its throat squeezed shut, his face ashen, as the guards dragged him out like a dead dog. Gu Mingqian, too, was terrified out of his wits. He scrambled and crawled after him, fleeing in panic. Silence returned to the main hall. I turned to look at Gu Tingyun, just as he was smiling at me. In that moment, I saw the undisguised admiration and delight in his eyes. I know I made the right move. My decision not to accept that cumbersome secondary allowance isn't a sign of weakness or incompetence, it's because I want to reserve all my sharpness for those toxic elements who truly seek to usurp what isn't theirs. Now that I've taken my place as the matriarch of the Marquis of Jing'an's household, I intend to hold that position with complete purity and ease. Ever since the master of the house asserted his authority that day, the second wife's household has been as wilted as an eggplant hit by frost, completely deflated, and they no longer dare to venture into the main courtyard without good reason. Just as I'd hoped, I've been able to live a peaceful life behind closed doors. There are no tedious formalities of morning and evening visits, no need to engage in polite small talk with my sisters-in-law, and certainly no need to spend every day poring over mountains of ledgers. Every morning, I would simply tend to the flowers and plants in our courtyard or play a few games of chess with Gu Tingyun. He was frail and sensitive to the cold. By late autumn, he could no longer do without a heated wall or a fox for a robe. Though I never took full charge of the Marquis' household affairs, I did take care to instruct the kitchen staff to prepare a variety of nourishing medicinal stews for him. Just 6 months after our wedding, news broke that sent the entire Jing'an Marquis manor into a frenzy. I was expecting a child. That day, after the imperial physician took her pulse and confirmed time and again that it was a slippery pulse, Grandmother Lu was so overcome with emotion that she knelt and banged her head on the ground more than a dozen times right in front of the Buddha hall. Disregarding propriety, she even rushed to the Imperial Medical Academy herself and paid a hefty sum to obtain a prescription to stabilize the pregnancy. Although Gu Tingyun still wore his usual pale, aloof expression, a rare, bright smile flickered in his deep, enigmatic eyes. He turned down nearly every social engagement he could, and every day, except when attending to essential official business in his study, he kept vigil at my bedside. Throughout my entire pregnancy, I was pampered to no end. Even when the imperial physician later diagnosed me with twins, a revelation that sent shockwaves through the entire Marquis mansion, I didn't have to go through much trouble. After 9 months of pregnancy, the baby was born naturally. It was an early spring night. As 2 loud cries rang out in succession, the midwife, drenched in sweat but unable to hide her joy, ran out of the delivery room. "Congratulations, Your Highness." "Congratulations, Your Lady. It's 2 daughters. Both mother and daughters are safe and sound." There was a moment of silence outside the delivery room, followed by Gu Tingyun's low, hoarse voice, tinged with a slight tremor, "A reward. Everyone in the entire household is to receive 3 months' salary." I lay weakly on the bed, watching as the midwife brought 2 tightly swaddled, rosy-cheeked little bundles to my side. They were so small, so fragile, yet they were my closest blood ties in this world. Gu Tingyun hadn't even changed out of his court robes. Still carrying a chill from his attire, he stood in the outer room beyond the folding screen, his voice betraying unmistakable elation and lingering fear. "Heir, you've suffered so much." However, while the birth of the twin daughters filled Gu Tingyun and Mrs. Lu with overwhelming joy, it also caused certain individuals who had long been lying in wait in the shadows to begin stirring once again. In just over a month, it was time for the full moon celebration for their two daughters. Although the Marquis' household did not hold a grand celebration, they did invite some close relatives who were on good terms with them. At the banquet, Second Master Gu from the second branch of the family and Gu Mingqian were notably among the guests. Second Master Gu had shed his previous dejection. His face was rosy, and he sighed to everyone he met. Although the Crown Prince's consort endured a difficult pregnancy, it's a pity, in the end, they were both girls. I'm afraid the Marquis' household still has no heir to carry on the family line. His sarcastic tone wasn't too loud or too soft, it was just loud enough for me, sitting at the head table, to hear every word clearly. A few relatives who were known for going with the flow chimed in as well. That's right. The Crown Prince has always been frail. It's a blessing beyond measure that he was able to have these twin daughters. Who can say for certain whether he'll be able to have more children in the future? After all, she's a girl, she'll have to marry someday. We can't very well leave this vast Marquis estate to someone from another family, can we? Gu Mingqian put on an air of deep sorrow and, clasping his hands in a bow before Gu Tingyun, said, "Cousin, please do not worry. Though I am of little talent, I am still a descendant of the Gu family. If you truly face difficulties in having children, I am willing to adopt my future eldest son into your family to carry on the lineage of the Marquis' household." This performance, which combined excellent singing and acting, instantly put a damper on the originally festive full moon banquet. Mrs. Liu, the mother-in-law, was so furious she was trembling all over, but out of concern for the family's reputation, she refrained from losing her temper on the spot. I let out a cold laugh and slammed the roux kiln teacup in my hand down on the table. The sharp thud instantly silenced the whispered conversations in the hall. This habit of meddling that my second uncle and my nephew Mingqian have, it really is deeply ingrained. My gaze was as sharp as a knife as I fixed it on that pair of treacherous grandfather and grandson. I've only just finished my postpartum confinement, and yet you two can't wait to rush over and curse my husband to have no heir. What, wasn't the humiliation of being kicked out of the main courtyard last time enough for you? Second Master Gu's expression darkened. What do you mean by that, Crown Prince's consort? Every word we've spoken is for the long-term future of the Marquis' household. Women are nothing but a financial burden, surely you don't expect two young maids to inherit the title? A money-losing burden? I sprang to my feet and strode step by step toward Second Master Gu, my gaze so fierce it seemed I could devour him whole. Is there a single clause in the laws of our great Xia that explicitly states a woman cannot head a household? As the legitimate daughter of my Marquis' household, I was born into royalty. My food, clothing, and daily necessities are all paid for with the main residence's hard-earned money. Why should outsiders presume to meddle? I turned to face my clan members, whose expressions betrayed their surprise, and spoke with conviction. I, Chuyin, make this clear today. My daughters are the most esteemed mistresses of the Marquis' mansion. Anyone who dares to treat them with even the slightest disrespect will be considered an enemy of my eldest branch. As for the family line, I looked down at Gu Mingqian from above, a mocking smile curving my lips. Even if my husband truly has no sons of his own, I'd rather adopt an orphan with a clean background from the charity hall than ever accept a thankless wretch with ulterior motives who spends all day eyeing the main estate's assets as my heir. You want to arrange an adoption? You can dream on. These words ruthlessly tore away the second wife's mask of hypocrisy. Gu Mingqian turned beet red as he was berated, clenching his fists tightly, yet he didn't dare utter a single word in defense. Gu Tingyun had been sitting quietly to one side the whole time, a feigned expression of indulgence and amusement on his pale face. Only after I had finished speaking did he speak slowly and deliberately. Though his voice was soft, his words carried weight. The Crown Prince's consort's wishes are my wishes. If my second uncle considers the daughter of our Marquis' household a financial burden, then from this day forward, the main residence will no longer subsidize the expenses of the second branch of the family. As soon as those words were spoken, it was as if a thunderclap had struck the second wife. Second Master Gu turned pale with shock. Tingyun, you're trying to drive your own uncle to his death. With all the clan elders present, how dare you be so heartless? Gu Tingyun leisurely pulled a thick ledger from his sleeve and slammed it down on the table with a thud. Over the past 10 years, the second branch of the family has, under various pretexts, siphoned off silver from the main estate, seized estates, and embezzled shopfronts, amounting to a total of 340,000 taels of silver. Since second uncle considers his daughter a money pit, then he need not trouble himself with squandering these money pits from my eldest branch. He turned to the butler standing beside him, his tone icy. Convey my orders, starting tomorrow, all properties under the second wife's name that were financed by the main householder to be reclaimed. All of the second wife's expenses are to be drawn from the common fund. Don't they have hands, feet, and male heirs? Let them earn their own living. This move precisely struck at the heart of the second branch's livelihood. Without financial support from the main family, the second branch, accustomed to a life of luxury, would soon be exposed for what it truly is, and even maintaining the family's reputation would become a challenge. Second Master Gu's legs gave way, and he nearly collapsed to the ground. As he looked at the ledger, he realized the game was up and that he could no longer act so arrogantly. The full moon banquet ended with the complete defeat of the second wife's household. At night, as I watched my two daughters sleeping soundly in their cribs, I felt a sense of peace and tranquility I had never experienced before. In my past life, I had to compromise and make do while caught between the conflicting interests of a vast family. I couldn't protect myself, much less anything I cared about. But in this life, I finally have the strength to stand like an impregnable fortress, keeping my children safely sheltered beneath my wings. Gu Tingyun gently wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on the top of my head. His breath carried a faint scent of medicine. Heir, with you here, this Marquis mansion finally feels like a home. I turned my head and smiled at him. This was just the beginning. The peaceful days we'd share together were still ahead of us. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, 5 years have passed since I gave birth to my twin daughters. Over the past 5 years, the rear courtyard of the Marquis of Jingnan's mansion has seen a truly astonishing proliferation of offspring. In the 3rd year, I was blessed once again and gave birth to twins. And just last year, I safely delivered a set of a boy and a girl. Giving birth to 3 sets of twins in a row is an extremely rare occurrence throughout the entire Great Xia dynasty. With my 2 daughters, 2 sons, and a set of boy and girl twins, 6 children in all, I've completely filled the once deserted Jingnan Marquis manor. Interestingly, as the children were born one after another, Mrs. Lu's attitude underwent a complete transformation. At first, she would kneel in the Buddha hall every day, praying to Guanyin Bodhisattva to grant us a son. But now, as soon as she hears that the imperial physician is coming to check on my health, she gets so nervous she twists her handkerchief into a knot. The day I had just finished my postpartum confinement, she sent piles of the finest blood swallow's nest and century-old ginseng into my courtyard as if it were water flowing, clutching my hand with tears welling in her eyes. Heir, you mustn't have any more children. How could your body possibly withstand such strain? Our Marquis' household already has a thriving line of heirs. Even if the emperor himself issued an edict, I would stand in the way. I absolutely cannot let you suffer the agony of childbirth again. Seeing the tenderness in my mother-in-law's eyes, I felt a deep sense of comfort. In my previous life, the matriarch of the Wei family treated me merely as a vessel for bearing children to carry on the family line, paying no heed to my deficiency of both qi and blood. But in this life, Mrs. Lu truly and sincerely cares for me as a living, breathing person. But what puts my mind at ease even more is my frail husband, Gu Tingyun. Although he still suffered from a chronic cough and was always wrapped in a thick fox fur coat during the winter, he never used this as an excuse to shirk his responsibilities. Whenever the children cried at night, he was always the first to get up and put on his robe. He would not allow the wet nurse to intervene. Instead, he would force himself to rise despite his frail, ailing body, take the little one into his arms, and pace back and forth in the warm chamber, gently soothing the child. Heir, sleep soundly, I'm here. Whenever I'd open my eyes groggily in my sleep, I'd always see him gently patting the swaddled baby and whispering tenderly to me. At home, he treated me with the utmost consideration and gave me complete freedom. In public affairs, he demonstrated an astonishingly decisive and forceful leadership style. In recent years, although Gu Tingyun has not frequently attended court, he has managed the Marquis's estates, bookshops, and medicinal herb gardens with meticulous care. With his keen insight and meticulous mind, he not only revived the once loss-making shops but also secretly monopolized most of the medicinal herb trade in Jiangnan. Under his stewardship, the Marquis's wealth has multiplied several times over. Those noblemen who had once looked down on the eldest branch of the family due to his frail health now raise their thumbs in admiration and show him a healthy dose of respect whenever the heir apparent of the Jingnan Marquis is mentioned. However, even though the eldest son's household is now financially well off and has many children, there are always some who refuse to give up and scheme to stir up trouble behind the scenes. Late that winter, Gu Tingyun accidentally caught a cold. He had a persistent high fever and was unable to leave the main courtyard for several days in a row. Second Master Gu, who had long been lying low in the second wife's household, believed he had finally been given a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Behind our backs, he secretly contacted several hardline elders of the clan and forcibly convened a clan assembly in the Marquis' ancestral hall, attempting to use the preposterous excuse that the crown prince is on his deathbed and the youngest son is too young to secure the title as a last-ditch, desperate struggle to seize power. Eldest sister-in-law. It's not that I, as your younger brother, am heartless, but Tingyun is now so ill, and those little ones are no older than 5. If anything were to happen to Tingyun, wouldn't this vast Marquis' estate be left vulnerable to exploitation by outsiders? Inside the ancestral hall, Second Master Gu spoke with tears streaming down his face. Only by quickly adopting Mingqian or Mingche into the main household and designating them as prospective heirs can we reassure the people and safeguard the Marquis' estate's centuries-old legacy. The clan elders were swayed by him. One after another, they nodded in agreement and loudly echoed his call to force Grandmother Lu to affix her private seal of adoption right then and there. With a loud bang, I kicked open the 2 heavy, red-lacquered wooden doors of the ancestral hall. A chill laced with wind and snow swept in, and the entire ancestral hall fell instantly silent. Wrapped in a dark red feathered cloak, I scanned the group of so-called elders, with their hypocritical facades, with a piercing gaze and let out a cold laugh. Let's see who dares to touch the title of the Marquis of Jingnan. I strode quickly to stand before Lady Lu, shielding her behind me, my words as cold as ice. The crown prince has merely caught a slight chill, yet my second uncle could not wait to bring men here to force a coup. If the ancestors enshrined in this ancestral hall were aware of this, they would surely be so disgusted by my second uncle's vile, opportunistic behavior that they'd leap right off their spirit tablets. Ms. Chu! How dare you! Second Master Gu flew into a rage. This is an internal decision of the Gu clan. What right do you, a mere woman, have to interfere? Mingqian, Mingche, hurry up and kneel down, beg the elders of the clan to settle this. He glared menacingly at Gu Mingqian and another member of the collateral branch, Gu Mingche, who had been standing in the corner the whole time. Just when everyone thought the 2 of them would kneel to express their gratitude as eagerly as hungry wolves pouncing on their prey, an unexpected scene unfolded. Gu Mingqian took a deep breath and slowly stepped forward. Far from kneeling, he instead bowed deeply to the clan elders, his tone unexpectedly calm and resolute. Elders, as for this adoption, your grandson neither desires it nor seeks it. As soon as those words were spoken, the entire room was taken aback. Second Master Gu was struck as if by lightning. He pointed at him and shouted furiously, "Have you lost your mind? Do you even know what you're saying? Grandfather, your grandson hasn't lost his mind." Gu Mingqian looked up, the greed and restlessness of his younger days now gone from his eyes. Ever since the main family cut off my support, I've truly come to see the cold, fickle nature of the world. Without genuine talent and ability, even if I were to forcibly take that seat, I would be nothing more than a puppet at the mercy of others. Moreover, my cousin Tingyun already has a legitimate son. If I were to force my way into the succession, it would be neither right nor proper, and it would surely lead to trouble in the future. Gu Mingche, who had been standing nearby, also stepped forward and declared in a loud voice, "Cousin Mingqian is right. Besides, cousin Tingyun has already spoken to us in private. He promised that as long as we're willing to study diligently and earn official positions through our own merits, or run our shops with integrity, the main branch of the family is willing to provide the funds to pave the way for us." We are sons of great Xia, how could we possibly act like leeches, relying on cursing our cousins to die young or scheming against women and children to secure our futures? This deafening, scathing rebuke was like a resounding slap that landed hard on Second Master Gu's face. I was slightly taken aback, but then a proud smile tugged at the corners of my lips. It turned out that Gu Tingyun was not only ruthless and decisive in the business world. Within his own family, he had also used a clever, open strategy early on to cut off the root of the problem, completely winning over the younger generation of the second branch of the family. Rather than seeking to exterminate them, he offered them a bright path that would allow them to hold their heads high as people, thereby effortlessly thwarting Second Master Gu's sinister plans. Well, that's what I call refusing to be adopted. Outside the entrance to the ancestral hall, a voice, cool yet full of vigor, rang out. I looked back and saw Gu Tingyun, draped in a heavy black fox fur cloak, striding steadily across the threshold with the support of a guard. Though his face bore an unnatural flush from a high fever, his eyes shone with startling intensity, like sharp blades drawn from their sheaths. He walked over to me, naturally taking my cold hand in his, then cast a cold glance at Second Master Gu, who was slumped on the ground, and ordered in a deep voice, since Second Uncle cares so deeply about the clan's affairs, he should remain in the ancestral hall and reflect on his mistakes behind closed doors before our ancestors. Without my permission, he must not set foot outside this threshold for the rest of his life. The elders exchanged glances. Faced with Gu Tingyun's iron-fisted rule and the complete collapse of the second branch of the family, not a single one dared to speak up in objection. That absurd plot to seize power was thus crushed by my husband and me working together with overwhelming force. On the way back to the main compound, the wind and snow gradually subsided. I clasped Gu Tingyun's burning hand in mine and looked up at him. "Your Highness, you've kept this move, cutting off the fuel from under the pot, a secret from me for far too long." Gu Tingyun chuckled softly, stopped in his tracks, and pulled me into his warm cloak. His voice was hoarse yet filled with boundless affection. "If you hadn't been there to shield me from those wolves and tigers, how would I have had the time to play this game of chess behind the scenes? Heir, as long as we stand united as husband and wife, no one in this world will ever be able to wrong us." I leaned against his chest, listening to his steady, powerful heartbeat. The crushing burden of my family's legacy from my past life, which had once left me breathless, finally vanished completely like smoke amid the swirling snow. On the 5th day after that snowstorm, it was as if the sky had fallen on the Ho family estate. Gu Tingyun, who had been forcing himself to stay strong in order to punish his second wife, fell gravely ill as soon as he returned to the main courtyard. First, he suffered from a persistent high fever, followed by a deep slumber that lasted day and night. Several of the Imperial Medical Academy's foremost physicians took turns treating him, and the prescriptions were changed time and again, yet Gu Tingyun's breathing grew increasingly faint. Princess Consort, the Crown Prince is likely to have a hard time this time around. The cold has penetrated his internal organs, compounded by a chronic illness from his youth. You'd best make preparations now. The former head of the academy knelt before the bed, shook his head in resignation, and let out a heavy sigh that cut deep into my heart like a dull knife. I stood beside the screen, looking at Gu Tingyun on the bed, so gaunt he was practically nothing but skin and bones, and felt as if all the blood in my body had frozen in an instant. Even though I lived to be 80 in my previous life and experienced countless separations and deaths, it wasn't until this very moment that I truly understood what bone-chilling fear felt like. I was terrified that this man, who was clearly destined to die young yet had protected me for so many years, would really just leave me behind like this. "Don't talk nonsense." I forced myself to keep my voice steady and, with tears welling in my eyes, cut off the head physician's words. "He promised me he'd stay with me forever. Go brew the medicine. No matter how expensive the herbs are, you'll keep him alive for me, even if it takes every last drop." For that half-month, I stayed by Gu Tingyun's bedside day and night. I temporarily entrusted the management of the home mansion's affairs to my mother-in-law, Lady Lu, and declined all visitors. Even when the 6 children cried and wailed, begging to see their father, I had the heart to have the matron keep them outside the courtyard. In my world, there was nothing left but this bed and the man lying on it, his breath as faint as a wisp of smoke. I wiped his body over and over again with a warm washcloth, talking to him patiently in his ear. Gu Tingyun, listen to me, if you dare to die, I'll remarry tomorrow with your 6 children in tow. I'll have them all take the surname Chu, let someone else live in your courtyard, spend the silver you've earned, and beat the children you raised. Didn't you say you'd shield me from the wind and rain? If you're gone, who will protect me? How could you bear to make me face those ruthless clan elders again? I kept threatening and begging like that until, one late night when the cold wind was howling, I could no longer hold myself up by the bed and, half asleep, closed my eyes. In a daze, I felt a slightly cool hand with prominent knuckles gently rest on the back of my hand. Ahem. Heir. An extremely faint yet unmistakable call rang in my ears. I jolted awake and met a pair of eyes that were weary yet gentle. Gu Tingyun must have woken up at some point. He was straining to turn his head to the side, gazing deeply at me. Don't remarry. He managed to force a faint smile onto his pale lips, his voice hoarse beyond recognition. I can't bear to let you go. Tears suddenly burst forth, and I threw myself against his chest, sobbing uncontrollably. In that moment, all my strength and defenses crumbled to dust. All I knew was that I had regained the most important person in my life. Gu Tingyun's constitution was simply too weak. After this serious illness, he had to stay in bed for nearly half a year before he was finally able to get up and walk around. During that time, having come face to face with death, we finally came to truly understand one another. I no longer shoulder all the household responsibilities single-handedly, as I did in my previous life, just to maintain a reputation for being a dutiful wife. I've learned to delegate appropriately, entrusting some of the less urgent financial matters to capable stewards under me. And Gu Tingyun has also come to terms with the situation. He's delegated some of the external affairs to those collateral branch heirs who voluntarily submitted to our authority, while he himself rests and recuperates peacefully in the main courtyard. When spring arrived, Gu Tingyun planted 2 osmanthus trees with his own hands in the open space of the main courtyard. Although these trees grow slowly, they have deep roots in a long blooming season, he said, taking my hand as we stood before the freshly turned soil, his eyes brimming with hope. When they grow up, their fragrance will fill the entire home mansion. By then, we'll set up wicker chairs under the trees, watch the children run and play, and grow old together. Wouldn't that be nice? I looked at him and nodded vigorously. And those 6 little devils of ours, just as he said, really did turn the vast Jing and Marquis manor upside down. The twins, eldest daughter Gu Changhuan and second daughter Gu Changel, had perfectly inherited Gu Tingyun's intelligence, but not a shred of his calm demeanor. When they were 5 years old, the 2 of them dug up a bowl of Gu Tingyun's black, bitter medicine from who knows where and, while the nanny wasn't looking, poured the entire contents into the koi pond in the backyard, claiming they were treating the little fish. The result was predictable. The entire pond of prized koi were so poisoned that they floated belly up, enraging grandmother Lu, who chased the girls all over the courtyard. Her 3rd grandson, Gu Qingxian, and 4th grandson, Gu Qingyu, were particularly mischievous little rascals. Her mother-in-law, Mrs. Lu, had originally been a serene person who loved to copy sutras in her Buddhist shrine, but ever since these grandchildren arrived, her shrine had become the children's battlefield. One day, Qingxian knocked over the inkwell, staining a scroll of the Heart Sutra that Grandma Lu had just finished copying. The next day, Qingyu snatched a toad from who knows where and placed it under Grandma Lu's offering table, causing the old lady to scream in terror. The grandmother who used to kneel before the bodhisattva every day, begging for more grandchildren, now rubs her temples in frustration whenever she sees these little tyrants. She often sighs deeply, Amitabha Buddha, may the bodhisattva protect us. Please let these little devils settle down for a moment, my old bones are about to fall apart. As for the youngest set of twins, Gu Qingze and Gu Changning, though they were young, they were quite crafty. They often teamed up with their older siblings to drive the old tutor in charge of their education to the point of despair. Throughout the home mansion, the suffocating silence and strict rules of the past were gone. In their place were the children's laughter and cheerful chatter, my mother-in-law's exasperated scolding laced with a smile, and the tranquility of Gu Tingyun and I sharing a smile as we gazed at each other under the tree. This is the world, full of the everyday joys and struggles of life, that I have truly longed for throughout my 2 lifetimes. The two osmanthus trees in the main courtyard have, before we knew it, grown tall and lush, forming a canopy over the courtyard. Every autumn, the courtyard is filled with a rich fragrance, and fallen blossoms drift like snow. Time flies. 20 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Those little rascals who used to tear the roof off the Marquis' mansion have now grown into fine, upright adults. Our eldest daughter, Gu Changhuan, had been fascinated by the ledgers in her father's study since childhood. When she came of age, rather than rushing to meet potential suitors like other noble young ladies in the capital, she knelt before us and kowtowed 3 times, asking to take over the herbal medicine shop in Jiangnan. The old-fashioned elders in the capital gossiped behind her back, saying it was unbecoming for the daughter of a marquis to appear in public like that. I, however, personally packed her luggage and assigned the most capable bodyguards to accompany her. Today, she is the foremost imperial merchant in the Great Xia dynasty and has even married a gentle husband well-versed in medicine. The couple travels far and wide, living a carefree and unrestrained life. Her second daughter, Gu Changel, was a natural-born warrior. Finding the confines of the family estate too restrictive, she insisted on studying martial arts under a martial arts master and mastered a formidable set of skills. Later, she married a young general stationed on the northern frontier. The couple rode side by side into the sunset over the vast river, a vast world of her own choosing, free from the constraints of domestic life. Of the 3 sons, Gu Qingxian was the most level-headed. He assumed the role of heir to the Marquis at a young age. He married the eldest daughter of the Chancellor of the Imperial Academy. My daughter-in-law has a straightforward and perceptive nature, somewhat reminiscent of my own when I was her age. Gu Qingyu, the 4th son, had been a child prodigy since childhood, capable of reading 10 lines at a glance and possessing a photographic memory. He achieved the 3 first places in the imperial examinations and was admitted to the Hanlin Academy. However, he was carefree by nature and deeply resented the insincerity and political maneuvering of the bureaucratic world. Every day, aside from compiling historical records, he would head out to the fields on the outskirts of the capital to study agriculture, sericulture, and irrigation. As for the youngest set of fraternal twins, Gu Qingze and Gu Changning, they lived as they pleased. The two traveled together across the vast and beautiful landscapes of the country. One day they'd send back a letter from Shu, and the next they'd send 2 wolf pelts from beyond the frontier. The children each found their own path, free from the shackles of their family, and lived their lives true to themselves. As for my mother-in-law, Mrs. Liu, she passed away peacefully at the age of 70 without any illness. She departed serenely. As she lay on her deathbed, she was surrounded by her mischievous yet pure-hearted and deeply devoted grandchildren. Holding my hand, she smiled tenderly and said, "Heir, having you as my daughter-in-law in this lifetime has been the greatest blessing, not only for me, but for the entire Marquis of Jing'an's household." She was not bound by rigid conventions. Instead, she spent her later years in a state of utter relaxation and joy, surrounded by the laughter of her grandchildren. As for Gu Tingyun, who the imperial physicians of the entire capital once declared would not live past 30, he is now approaching the age of 50, yet he still stands robustly by my side. He doesn't possess any miraculous elixir capable of bringing the dead back to life. The fact that he has lived to this day is entirely due to decades of unwavering self-discipline. He avoids the cold, refrains from drinking strong liquor, and does not overtax his mind. Every morning, he performs a set of the 5 animals exercises on the veranda, and when the time comes, he rests, never overexerting his body simply because of the physical stamina he had in his youth. More importantly, there was none of that backstabbing, soul-crushing infighting within our household. With a calm and open mind, this frail, ailing body has miraculously recovered, bit by bit. On that day, the sun was shining brightly, and a gentle breeze blew. I neatly arranged the Ho family's identification tokens, keys, and the key ledgers for each estate and shop on a Wangwali wood tray and pushed it toward my eldest son's wife. "Mother, what are you doing?" The daughter-in-law paused for a moment, a flicker of fear crossing her face. I smiled as I took her hand and patted it gently. Qingxian is now capable of standing on his own. It's time to hand over the reins of this Marquis' mansion to you young people. You needn't worry. I've already established the house rules. The collateral branches wouldn't dare come to the main residence to beg for handouts. All you need to do is manage the 100 or so people in our main branch. If you encounter any difficulties, feel free to delegate authority to the stewards below you. Don't be like those old-fashioned fools who, for the sake of empty prestige, shoulder every burden themselves and end up wearing themselves out. The daughter-in-law's eyes welled up with tears, and she bowed deeply. I will humbly follow your teachings, mother. Once I handed over the central feed, I suddenly felt a sense of relief wash over me, as if I'd shed the very last trace of constraint. Early the next morning, Gu Tingyun and I changed into the light silk robes typically worn by wealthy families, and as our children and grandchildren bowed in farewell, we boarded the carriage bound for our country estate on the outskirts of the capital. That country retreat, nestled against the mountains and beside the water, lacked the high walls and deep courtyards of a marquis' mansion. Instead, it was surrounded by verdant bamboo covering the mountains and valleys and a clear, winding stream. It was the place we had long planned to spend our retirement. With the rumble of its wheels, the car drove out of the bustling, vibrant capital. Gu Tingyun leaned back against the cushioned seat of the carriage, holding an exquisite hand-warmer in his hands. Silver-white frost and snow had touched the temples of his hair, and the corners of his eyes bore the furrows of time, yet when he looked at me, those deep eyes remained as clear and bright as they had been on our wedding day, brimming with affection. My lady, the heavy burden of the mansion has finally been lifted. For the next few decades, I'll be entirely at your service. He teased with a smile, casually tucking a strand of hair that had been blown out of place by the wind back behind my ear. I leaned my head against his shoulder, listening to his steady, strong heartbeat, my gaze fixed on the vast, endless landscape outside the car window. Looking back on my life, I once died within that feudal clan, which was like an abyss. In my past life, Gu Wangting poured her heart and soul into an oppressive marriage, and was forced to lose her sense of self by the 4 words clan loyalty. In this lifetime, I am truly fortunate to have held fast to my principles on this path I've walked anew. I did not sacrifice myself to gain the so-called honor of being the matriarch, nor did I allow these 6 children to tie my hands. Together with Gu Tingyun, we fought our way through the maelstrom of power and the clan schemes, ultimately emerging as whole, independent, and free souls. A good marriage is never about exhausting yourself to fulfill the needs of the whole family, nor is it about losing sight of who you are amid endless household chores and constant compromises. Rather, it is about 2 independent souls standing side by side, maintaining their individuality while supporting one another, and even in this era of strict conventions, it is about holding firmly to the right to make our own life choices. Gu Tingyun. I closed my eyes, savoring the pleasant sensation of the gentle breeze brushing against my cheeks. Huh? I'm here, he replied softly. When we get to the country house, plant 2 more osmanthus trees for me in the yard. I want the biggest ones. His chest heaved as he let out a hearty laugh. All right, you have it your way. Not only will I plant osmanthus trees, but I'll also build you a greenhouse so you can enjoy peonies even in winter. The carriage rolled steadily into the distance, heading toward the rising sun. This bond, forged over half a lifetime, had weathered the trials of life and death and shattered the shackles of convention. All that remained was freedom and clarity, and a love that would last forever. The end.